Hey there, Bible buddies. I've got another Bible review for you today, and this one is a 1977 edition of the New American Standard Bible. Now, this particular one was done by Thomas Nelson, and it is in a black bonded leather. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with the 77 NASB, it is typically considered to be a more beloved translation of the NASB, considered to be a little bit more wooden than the 95, but again, more loved maybe than the 95, and certainly more than the 2020. Personally, I like the 95 best of all of them, but the 77 is no slouch. I'm a more of a literal translation loving Bible enthusiast, so I prefer. It doesn't bother me if translations are wooden. So let's go ahead and get into it. We'll take a look. We'll start with the exterior cover here. You can see it is a bonded leather. Nothing really too fancy to write home about. On bonded leather covers, this is typical. You can see this kind of cracking here that you wouldn't get in a normal leather cover. But again, bonded leather is just glued together leather scraps with a grain imprinted on it. It does have Holy Bible and then New American Standard underneath it on the cover, embossed or debossed, as the case may be, and a little perimeter liner on the edge. On the spine, we have New American Standard Bible, and references, Words of Christ in red, Dictionary Concordance, and Nelson, and there's the Nelson item number of 523. So this is always the kind of the tell. I know each number kind of designates different things. One of them being the cover material, which I think is the last digit. I'm not sure what the other two digits designate, but like if you start looking up older Nelson Bibles, they have these kind of numbers that they use in reference, and they're particular to each edition of the Bible. So the more you look at them, the more you'll kind of see you'll see kind of the standards that they use. But aside from that, we have the kind of the rib indications there, spine rib indications, and they are slightly raised, or at least they feel a little bit, maybe they don't look ever so raised, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and then the perimeter line continues as well, continues to the back also, with the rest of that kind of bonded leather cover. Now this cover appears to have held up well enough, but this is from that kind of era when bonded leathers weren't super awesome. So I can't speak for its longevity, but I would imagine, might be probably middle of the road. It feels like a nicer bonded leather, but just from, seeing some little kind of dings and things here, I would imagine it will not hold up for decades and decades of use, but it'll probably hold up decently well enough. So let's go ahead and get into it. Actually, we'll take a look at the other external features first. We can see that there are red and yellow head and tail bands. And then there is, I don't even know, this is like a gilt, but it's not really a gilt. It's kind of maybe like a brass page edge. It's a very matte finish, and you can see some discoloration here, some like greening almost that you would get with like a kind of a brass finish. So maybe that's what they're using, like a thin brass sheet. The ribbon is a thin, or I should say a narrow, but fairly thick double-sided satin ribbon in black, and it's nice enough for the size. I don't mind these thinner ribbons or narrow ribbons as long as they're thick and like kind of heavy-duty ribbons. So I don't mind this one very much at all. Then you have again the yellow and red head and tail bands. We'll go ahead and get into it. We can see that it's a synthetic paste down construction. I'll show you the corner work there. Relatively nice corner work for a bonded leather edition. There you are. And it does appear to be reinforced there up in the book block. You can see a little bit of the tape kind of imprinting there on the edges. So it is reinforced. So it should hold up well enough. Again, a black synthetic material. Go ahead and start flipping through it. We have our presentation page there. And then our church record page. I'll kind of skip through this a little bit, just here for the second, but then we have our Holy Matrimony page on the opposite side of the church record page. Now the previous owner, what's his name, Frank, has glued some additional kind of aids in here, and it looks to be kind of like how to lead somebody to Christ, I guess, like a quick down and dirty gospel sharing. It's got some kind of questions here. I'll go ahead and show it to you guys. I mean, this sort of information is always neat to see other people's approaches here. You can pause it if you want to read it, but this was added by him. This was not originally in the Bible. I don't know where he would have gotten this from, so your guess is as good as mine. All right, we'll flip past that. So then on the other side of the Holy Matrimony page, we have the husband's family tree and the wife's family tree, our children and grandchildren, and then the records of death. And we have our title page, New American Standard Bible, with read-along references, and we'll see what that means here in a few minutes. It's An interesting way of doing it. Not my favorite way of doing references, but an interesting way nonetheless. Here's our copyright information. And again, this is the 77 edition, done in, appears to be 1985 is when it was published. Although I do see a date marker here, so I have to update this on mine. But typically the way that Nelson does their stamping, right? So it's kind of weird the way that it is. So this is the 1977 edition of the NASB. I'm not sure what this 1978 is. This edition published in 1985, so I'm guessing maybe the first time that this particular layout was published was in 1985, and this appears to be the 16th printing of 1999. I could be wrong on all those fronts, so take my word with a grain of salt. It does appear to have been printed in the Republic of Korea. And we have a little forward there. The fourfold aim, goodness of the Lockman Foundation. And then the preface to the New American Standard Bible. The principles of translation. And we have the special features of your American Standard Bible. Explanation of the general format. Abbreviations and special markers. Here's our table of contents. Our Old Testament title page. And the book of Genesis. So if I can zoom in here, let you guys take a look at the text. Very nice text. I like the layout. Kind of. I mean, it's nothing too crazy. I've always thought that Lockman, though, did a nice job with their layouts. And this is certainly no slouch, although, again, it has some features that aren't particularly my favorite. We'll go ahead and flip the page here so you guys get a better look of everything. So we have up at the top corners, we have the book and then associated chapter numbers that correlate with each page. We have our page numbers in the top center. We have our chapter indicators here. Now there are no, there's no, subject headers or running headers throughout the text, anything like that. So you're kind of on your own as far as that goes. Now there are kind of bold verse numbers there, and those indicate the new paragraphs. So it is just a double column verse by verse. So you're going to look towards these bold verse numbers to indicate, hey, this is the beginning of a new paragraph right here. So those sorts of things. Now, one thing to notice, the thing that I'm not super fond of is just your end of verse references. So you can see that there's end of verse references, and there's also end of verse footnotes. You'll kind of see here. You see a little note there, heavens, and creeps, in italics. And I'm not a huge fan of that because sometimes it can get confusing because, say if you have a verse in this instance where it's kind of tight, it might almost appear to kind of run into it. So, you get a little kind of, possible confusion there for, your references versus the biblical text. And I'm never a fan of that. I like footnotes, references, those sorts of things to be very, very clearly delineated between the biblical text. I prefer that there not be any kind of confusion between the reader and, things that were added by the publisher. So we'll go ahead and flip through. You can see that there is kind of poetic settings there. We'll flip through and we'll get to Psalms and we'll take a look at things. This would make for a very excellent reader, certainly. If your aim is not to do any sort of, deep studies or anything like that, and just have a nice reader, mid-sized reader, this would be the way to go, certainly, with just some kind of light references here and there to help you along. Let's go ahead and get to Psalm 119. So we can see that they do not give the examples of the Hebrew letters, but they do give the kind of the indication there in English, the transliteration there of the Hebrew characters. And we'll take a look at the paper while we're here. It's a fairly nice paper. I mean, of this era, paper was had just gotten out of that kind of India paper, so you can tell that they weren't really too sure what to do to increase the opacity there for a while. It took quite a while for them to kind of get back around to having some really opaque paper. So there is quite a bit of see-through. I can certainly easily read what's on the opposite side of this page, and then I can even read, like there it says Revere. So that would be like the very next sheet of paper. So yeah, it's not the best. It's not like the absolute most horrible thing that I've ever seen. but it's certainly not India paper or French milled or anything like that. But a decent enough paper. We can also see a lot of that kind of formatting here. There are a lot of single word lines, so it doesn't appear that they made any sort of attempt to format the poetry there. Let's go ahead and get to the New Testament, or at least the intertestamental section. We'll look at intertestamental. Whatever I said. Intertestamental. There we go. There's the end of Malachi. We have the New Testament title page. And we have the Gospel according to Matthew. We'll take a look at the red letter, which isn't very red at all. But I'll show you up close. So it's definitely not a red letter. It's kind of Thomas Nelson's more of a burnt orange sort of red letter. And in this particular example, it's almost like maybe like a light brown color with a little more orange to it, I guess. Kind of an odd color, but definitely different slightly from what we've been seeing recently, but nowhere near a red. So don't purchase this expecting a red. It's more along the lines of like a light orangey brown kind of color. Go ahead and flip to the end. See what kind of features we have. There's the end. We can see the red letter goes all the way through the end of the New Testament. And we have our illustrated dictionary concordance to the New American Standard Bible. And there's your copyright information for that. Here's some sample text. If you guys are interested. Kind of flip through it. You can see there's some illustrations. Some various things. Kind of simple stuff. Some camels and that sort of thing. A heart. The shekel of the sanctuary. A scorpion. And in case you didn't know what sandals were, there's an illustration there for you. Maybe one of these days sandals will become passé, and we'll actually have to have an illustration to remind us of what they look like. And here we have the maps, so it goes right into the from the dictionary concordance to the maps. And these are definitely kind of reminiscent of those 1990s maps. Kind of full color, kind of hard to make out a little bit. Especially you see kind of in this area, it's fairly hard to read kind of the markings on the map there. Very nice as far as like color choice, but just hard to read as far as black text on top of that color. It gets very difficult to read in here. There we go. And then we just have our end sheet at the end of the map, so it wraps up very concisely. So, honestly, it's a decent addition for the 77. If you're a fan of the 77, you should be able to find these fairly easily enough online. Typically, they do tend to be, kind of bonded leather covers. And again, I'm not too sure how it'll hold up. It appears to be like a nice enough bonded leather. It's not really grippy. It's grippy enough. I would give it like a kind of medium high traction. It doesn't want to slide easily out of my hand, so it's not like some of those very slick bonded leathers. It is somewhat grippy. But, it seems to be holding up nice enough. I don't know how well used this one was. It does appear to have been used enough because it looks like the ribbon marker there has been moved around quite a bit over the years. And I do see some kind of wear patterns here that would indicate, thumbing through it and scratches with their fingernails and that sort of thing. So it probably was used well enough. And it does seem to be holding up well enough. So I guess Thomas Nelson probably did have a pretty good formulation of bonded leather back in the day. Let's go ahead and get some measurements. So it comes in at just about 8.5 inches tall by just over 6 inches wide and about 1.5 inches thick. Let's take a look at the font size. It is a very nice size font, I'll give it that. Probably considered a large print by today's standards. Yeah, definitely a large print by today's standards. So it's a 12 point versus Times New Roman for the uppercase. And for the lowercase, it also appears to be a 12 point font. Maybe a little bit bigger actually, about a 12.5 point font versus Times New Roman for the lowercase. So I would say about a 12.5 point font all around. Definitely going to make a very nice, reader's edition, especially given the size. It's a little more portable. It's not like a full size Bible. It's the next size down. So definitely a decent size font. Yeah, I think that's it. Bible buddies, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, until next time, Bible buddies, bye.